In my presentation, I talk about what are the typical especially male fathers that are presented in TV shows, movies, those types of things. You've got a Homer Simpson character who, I mean, everybody knows who he is, right? He
Yeah.
cares about beer, donuts, comfort. Uh, he's unintelligent, unambitious, messes up, but has a good heart. That's the message. He tries. Bless his heart, right? He tries. Then you've got like a Tim Taylor from Home Improvement, who, again, he's like a bumbling idiot, can't do anything right, cares about hot rods and power tools. Those are his obsessions, and they kind of paint that in a negative light where he takes everything too far. And then you have like his wife, for example, who is going off to get a PhD, while he can't help his kids in elementary school with their homework.
I have been, and maybe wokeism is dying, but I have been, and you have been, the enemy number one, which is the white male, middle-aged Trump voting or conservative male, right? Judeo-Christian male, and we're at the bottom of the food chain. I see my sons. I have sons, and I don't like how they feel. They come home, they're in drama, both of them, and music, and they're sad because most of the plays are about women heroes. Okay, I am here with Adam Salsbury. Not to be confused with Salisbury steak. No, I'm playing. Which was my favorite food when I was a kid. My mom would make the little TV dinners. Anyway, you're like, okay. Whatever.
I hated it.
It's very British name, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It comes from there.
Are you Pioneer stock?
I'm not. My wife is.
Where are you from?
So, I was born in California, grew up mostly in Ohio, and came out here as a visiting student at BYU. During those summer months, I met my wife, and I've been living in Utah ever since, and that was 2009.
Nice.
My dad was a convert to the church, so that there's no pioneer ancestry there. My mom, I think it was her parents that joined. So we're pretty fresh as far as family lineage, which is great because there's a lot of names to take to the temple.
Oh, yeah. So you and I met up at the firm conference. I was very hooked. Not intrigued. You hooked me in with the topic. Now, what was your deal there? Did you speak there?
I did, yeah. I presented.
That's right. And your presentation was on men's hearts failing them.
Yeah, it's about healing the hearts of men.
Yeah. And we're talking. Go ahead.
Just because they fail and they will fail.
And we are talking specifically about men, not men and women, but you're concerned about manhood too.
Yeah, masculinity. What's happening with the male side of our society today?
Yeah. So what are your do you have credentials behind you? It doesn't matter.
No, not really. I kind of started this journey myself last March, and started attending a men's retreat called Warrior Heart, and we'll talk more about that later. But I fell in love with this concept of like my heart coming alive. And when your heart comes alive, you can't just keep it to yourself. You want to help other people have their heart come alive, right? Same thing with the gospel. You have that joy and you don't keep it to yourself. You go out and tell other people about it. You spread that. And I've seen I've seen what's happened with men as they've kind of started this journey and the difference it's had in their lives. And honestly, it's something that not enough people know about.
Yeah, I agree. And when I got on here a few minutes ago, I said, this is, with my hands folded like this. I I knew that the adversary wasn't wanting us to talk about this. Some things were going wrong. My mindset was a little quirky, but I remember, and I said, this is the most important thing that we can talk about probably this week. Out of all the podcasts that I'm doing and interviews, this is one of the top for me. And here's why. I'm a Gen Xer. Are you also?
I'm a millennial.
Okay. You got some gray hair there.
I do.
You could pass for a Gen Xer.
Yeah.
I'm 53. I was born in 1971. So I still remember a time where men we were having equal rights was kind of a thing already. We went through the 70s, which was kind of revolutionary for women and men. Women were coming into the workforce. Divorces were happening more in the 70s. I know I was a product of it. In 1978, my parents divorced. I was 8 years old. And I remember how it affected me. I even remember a movie, and a lot of my audience are boomers. They will remember the movie Kramer versus Kramer, which was with Dustin Hoffman and I think it was Meryl Streep. And it was about divorce. And that was not a common thing, but it was starting to happen a lot more. So to make a long story short, I remember, to get back to you, I remember a time where we were still considered men, but people were coming in. It's like the racism issue. It's not a thing. It didn't exist in the 80s. And I mean, there were prejudices. We didn't say racism, we said prejudice. But anyway, and we all had them. And we all knew that we had them. But men were still revered as men. We still celebrated manhood and we celebrated womanhood. We did in the 90s as well. And something happened, and you know what I'm talking about. So this is important to me, not only because it affects me. I have been, and maybe wokeism is dying, but I have been, and you have been, the enemy number one, which is the white male, middle-aged Trump voting or conservative male, right? Judeo-Christian male. And we're at the bottom of the food chain. I see my sons. I have sons, and I don't like how they feel. They come home, they're in drama, both of them, and music, and they're sad because most of the plays are about women heroes. All of the movies that we see today, especially the ones that have been repurposed from older movies, there's female heroes that are taking over. And that's not a bad thing, but we're jerking the manhood out of reality. Anyway, so this is important to me. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, and I would say to build on that, in my presentation, I talk about what are the typical especially male fathers that are presented in TV shows, movies, those types of things. You've got a Homer Simpson character who, I mean, everybody knows who he is, right? He cares about beer, donuts, comfort. He's unintelligent, unambitious, messes up, but has a good heart. That's the message. He tries. Bless his heart, right? He tries.
Okay.
Then you've got like a Tim Taylor from Home Improvement, who, again, he's like a bumbling idiot. Can't do anything right. Cares about hot rods and power tools. Those are his obsessions. And they kind of paint that in a negative light where he takes everything too far. And then you have like his wife, for example, who is going off to get a PhD while he can't help his kids in elementary school with their homework. There's so many characters just out there. Then you have the flip side of it, where you've got someone like a James Bond, and it's like, cool, we've got this guy. He's masculine, he's athletic, he's smart, he's got money, he gets all the women, he can do cool stuff, but he also has no real moral compass. He'll sacrifice anything to accomplish his mission, and he's also unattainable.
Or he's not, and I know this doesn't, I want to explain before I say, well, after I say this, or he's not the typical man that we knew, as far as maybe he's not Caucasian. Not that that is a bad thing, but even, I have some friends that are black, and they'll be like, you know what? We don't like it. I'm serious. They're like, we don't like it that they're overcompensating. It makes it look very apologetic. It makes it look like Hollywood is like, we're sorry that we didn't include you in all this for a long time. And it's not because we can't all be heroes of different races and creeds. It's just that, why do we feel like we need to overcompensate for things that were, it's like Bollywood. You're not going to have a bunch of white actors in Bollywood because that doesn't represent Bollywood. It's or we're overcompensating for certain males that don't take on the roles they used to. Right.
Yeah. And like, if you look at another example, I didn't bring this up in my presentation, but you look at the superheroes from Marvel, right? So you've got the Chris Hemsworth and the Chris Evans and Chris Pratt. There's other that aren't Chris's, but they're just these huge muscular guys. And a lot of guys will look at that and say, that's what I need to be a real man.
Yeah.
Again, it's unattainable. We can't go spend 6+ hours in a gym every day and have a nutritionist and all these people on staff helping us look like that. Like, it's unattainable. But it starts to wear us down as men, and we realize, like, okay, well, we can't be the Thor or Captain America or a James Bond. So we must be in this other group of stupid, lazy, dumb guys. Like, that must be where I fit. And the reality is that most guys are in the middle. They're just not represented in the media very well. And so they don't really know what they're supposed to look like. And that goes into, really starts as a youth, as a boy. We go through and we say that, these boys need to be men, but they don't know what that means.
They don't anymore.
We don't know what that means.
I'm surprised, it amazes me when I do see younger men and women still understanding traditional roles. And I go, where are they getting this from? It might be because there are certain pockets of the United States, especially the Midwest or Utah, that are still teaching their children, the roles. And the patriarchy, and I'm doing quotations, air quotes, I don't believe it came from males or females. I think it came from society, both. You had strong women that raised, you always had the woman that ruled the roost, even back during the old days. In the old days, even, there was men that were more stronger in the home, and there were women, right? And even the women would raise their sons to grow up, and you're going to take over your father's business. You're going to do this. And she would train them up in the home because the father was gone all the time. So honestly, who contributed to that? It wasn't a bad thing because women had roles too. And they were always strong in many different ways. It wasn't that one person was taking over the world it was two people or a team most of the time. I mean, you still had the jerk at home that was, but jerks have always been jerks.
Right.
And right? Men that ruled their homes with by tyranny, even in the 1700s, were still looked at by their neighbors as jerks, you know. I think we all inherently and naturally knew the difference between that and just being and homegrown diplomacy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say specifically for men today, they're really not living up to their potential, right? And so think about a boy growing up. He wants to be the hero, slay the dragon, right? Save the princess. And men have those same desires. We want to be the hero in our story. We want to build our castle. You know, we want to be tough and strong. And a lot of men look okay on the outside, but on the inside they're completely broken. And a lot of this happens as a boy growing up into manhood, and they have these wounds that are never resolved. And have you heard of the Pike experiment?
No.
Okay. There were there were scientists, and they had a pretty big fish tank, and they put a pike inside, and then they put a little fish in to see how the pike would react. And of course, the pike is an aggressive fish, and it eats other fish. And so he swam over there and ate the fish, and did this a couple more times to establish consistency. Then they slide a piece of glass into that tank. The pike is on one side, and they introduce same kind of fish on the other. Well, the pike keeps going for that fish, but hits the piece of glass over and over and over again, to the point where the pike decides to give up. And then they remove the piece of glass. Now, at this point, the pike is hungry. It hasn't eaten in a while. And you would think as soon as that piece of glass is out, the pike would go over and, try again to get that fish. It didn't happen. The fish would even come over to the pike, swim around it. The pike would not go after it because it remembered the past trauma of going after the fish and what would happen. And these pike would actually starve to death with available food right in front of them.
Before I forget, brothers and sisters, if you are enjoying the content, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ding the bell for notifications. Your support means the world to me and helps the channel grow. And hey, if you want to contribute to the program, I do prefer Venmo first, then Cash App, then PayPal, then Zelle. And I've got cool products. I got cool merch. That's all being designed. I get a percentage of it. And that's if you're interested. Remember, your comments are what keep this community thriving. So drop your thoughts below. And if you're feeling extra generous, consider becoming a YouTube member or sending a super thanks right there. The button's right below the screen during our videos. Now back to the topic. So how does that equate to, are you saying that would we look at that as a progression, a digression in society? Or are you talking about one individual or on an individual level?
Yeah, more for individuals. So this applies to men in
dating
many ways. Right? Men go for things and they hit that glass over and over again. It might be failure. It might be being told no. There's a lot of things that men go for something and they just don't get it. They get blocked by one thing or another. And what ends up happening is men decide that they don't want to fail. And so they don't go for the promotion that they wanted. They don't go fishing over the weekend because they're afraid of what their wife will do and the argument that will ensue. They don't have guy time because the family needs them. And when they get hit that glass enough, trying to get something they want, it just becomes crushing. And that's what's happening to men. Like that glass panel gets slid into place in our minds, and we realize, wow, we can't get the stuff that we need because we've been told our whole life we shouldn't have it.
When I was growing up, we were told it was natural. We were told as men, if you want to date, you need to go ask the girl out. I remember a time where in my day, when we would pick up a date, we would go somewhere and you would see women, right? Almost like church dances. I'm still glad that they have them. But, and I think we're still telling our boys to ask the girl to dance. But I think the conundrum, there's a couple things. Let me just tell you what's coming to my mind is I do remember a time where it was not just acceptable, but inferred that you're the man, you ask the girl out, and you take charge of the whole situation. And we were confident. I mean, you still had people that were not confident, and there were still times where you were afraid, but you weren't afraid because of society telling you that this is wrong. You were afraid because of just natural shyness or feeling that you weren't as good enough for the girl. You know what I mean? And then you had to get the courage up to go ask her out. But you were never, it was also inferred or implied that the girl would not be rude to you either, and that she would let you down easy and in a nice way. Today, I watched this kid, very handsome kid. It was a meme or like a short where some guy's asking him, are you dating? And he's like, no, I have a hard time getting dates. And you look at him, you're like, he's got blonde hair, blue eyes. He's a very handsome boy. Then you see these girls pop up. It's one of those things where the videos pop up and strangers talk to each other. I don't know what that's called. But you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
These girls pop up and they're very confident. And you see a lot of confidence from the girls these days. Not all the girls are nasty. They're just like men. Young men are nasty and some are nice. Some women are mean and some are nice.
Yeah.
But they pop up and they seem like they're pretty cool girls. And they're like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? He panicked. He didn't know what to do. He acted like a bumbling idiot that just was like, oh my gosh, I don't know. Am I right? Am I wrong? What should I do? And just didn't want anything to do with it. Now, in my day, we would have been, what the heck is wrong with this kid? He's handsome. Everything's going for him. And it's because he's been indoctrinated to think that he is a predator if he likes a girl, or he's a predator or a bad person. He has these feelings that are physiological for the opposite sex. And you are invading in somebody's territory if you're going up to them at school and asking them for their phone number. You're a creeper. You're a weirdo. In my day, you weren't. You were just a kid, a guy wanting to ask a girl out.
Yeah, and it's sad how far things have fallen, really.
Am I talking too much? I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're fine. You're fine. No, I was just thinking about there's a trend that I noticed with some men, and so what essentially happens is similar situation like that. A man doesn't have the confidence. He doesn't date a lot. And the first girl that he gets serious with, he's like, oh, this has to be the one. I'm serious with her. And he pursues her almost relentlessly. And if they marry, what ends up happening is this man starts to worship her. And ask a woman, they don't want to be worshiped.
Right.
And it leads to a lot of marital problems. And the man will bend over backwards. He will do everything in his power to make her happy. I know a guy who went from.
Are you seeing that a lot today? Sorry.
Yeah.
Why is that? but finish your story, but I'm sure you're going to get to the why, but go ahead.
Yeah. So there's a guy I know who started out by, has kids. So he's sleeping in the same room as his wife. And then she said, I don't want you in this room. And he's like, oh, well, I'll just make you happy. And then he went to a different room. And then she said, well, I don't want you in that room either. And so he ended up in the basement, in the furnace room, sleeping there. And he put himself in that situation because he wasn't willing to stand up to her and say, you know what? I'm the head of the house. I make the decisions here. Like, yes, we are 18, but I'm not going and sleeping in the furnace room in the basement to make you happy. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And he didn't have the ability to say that. And again, I think it's part of that glass panel that gets slid in.
Well, you don't even have to be I'm the head of the house. I make the decisions. How about just mutual respect?
Yeah.
How about we just respect each other? How about you show me the respect that I show you? We've lost that. And it's not these young women's fault either.
Mm-mm.
They've been told that they're a princess and they could do no wrong. You don't got to lose weight. You don't have to do anything. And you'll see these women that they have these high expectations for their mate. And the guys are just like, you know what?
Yeah.
Who do you think you are?
Super unrealistic.
Yeah.
I've seen quite a bit of those clips where, the women all think that they're a 10 and they deserve the top 1%. And they're like, guys, I'm sorry, you don't deserve the top 1%. And that's part of the struggle with these men is they're, like I said before, they're not the Thor and Captain America. They're not these super confident, able to do anything guys, and they feel crushed. And especially when they do approach a girl and they say, hey, are you willing to go out? She's like, well, how much money do you make? That's like one of the first questions they ask. And it's damaging. And so
it's like they want the best of the old days. They want the best of trad wifery, but leaving the rest of it, right? I don't want the responsibility part. I don't want the part where I have to bend for you. I don't want the part where I have to give to you. I want the part where I like the parts of old patriarchy where you were showering, where you showered me with things.
You get taken care of.
Yeah. But I also want my autonomy and my independence, and I want to be treated as an equal. No, this isn't equal anymore. I'm a subservient male to irrational thinking.
Yeah. So there's an amazing book that a lot of men, if they're falling into this category, should go read. And it's called No More Mr. Nice Guy. And the premise of the book is that we are taught, especially in an LDS culture, to be nice. We don't want to offend anybody. We don't want to make them upset. So we need to be nice. And usually what nice looks like as a man is bending over backwards and putting ourselves in awful situations to make other people happy. Not always. And being nice isn't a bad thing, but if it gets to the point where people are walking over you or you're allowing things to happen that you wouldn't normally allow to happen because you're trying to be nice, it starts to become a problem. And I've talked to several men who have said something along the lines of, if I had this book a few years earlier, it would have saved my marriage. Because again, they're not showing up with strength to their wife. They're showing up looking for validation, looking for acceptance, looking for, the answer to the question, am I enough? And that's not, you don't go to your wife with that type of question.
The thing about approaching your wife with more strength, that's great. But you can be the best guy today. She still hasn't healed. She's still thinking a certain way. So you might approach her and be like, look, I'm not going to be overbearing, but I'm going to take control of my own life and be a man of there was a book called Man of Steel and Velvet
Mm-hmm.
in the old days, and be both that, right? A man of steel and a man of velvet at the same time. I'm not gonna, be like, no, I'm the boss, and that. No,
Right.
that's not what. But you
Right.
can be that good man, but she's still going to have her problems if she's not willing to go the other way too, right?
Absolutely. It really does become this dichotomy of healing together and getting on that healing path together and realizing that relationships can be better than they are and having both parties work on that and work towards that.
Yeah.
Um, so I wanted to talk about what's happening with boys for just a second. Um, and there's a really good documentary that if people want to go watch it, it's called The Mask They Wear. And it talks about the struggles that boys are going through, but um, some interesting statistics. So less than 50% of boys or men with mental challenges seek help. So they know that something is wrong. They know that they're depressed or they have something else going on in their life, but they don't go ask for help. And part of that goes back to we're told we need to handle it ourselves. And the tragedy behind that is that every day, 3 boys are committing suicide. And if you look at suicide rates for ages 10 to 24, suicide is the number 2 cause of death. The only thing that precedes it, the number 1 killer is unintentional deaths. So that would be accidents, car accidents, pool
Right.
drowning, falling
Right.
off a roof, that kind of thing. But from 2001 to 2021, the number of suicides in that group has gone up 68%.
Oh my goodness. And
So
what
we're
demographic of male? What
well, this
age
is
group?
this is just age 10 to 24,
Young.
younger people.
Now, are you finding most of them white males?
So there is a statistic on white males. I'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
Um, but what happens when fathers aren't present with boys? There's some sad things, and this is either physically not present or like emotionally, mentally not present. It happens to all the time. Dads just check out, right? They come home from work, they're tired, they watch TV or get on their phone or whatever, and they just don't interact with their kids. So what happens to the boys? They have a higher rate of depression and suicide. There's greater substance abuse, a higher rate of crime, earlier sexual activity. They have poor education outcomes, and they're not able to manage emotions. Um, and then so there's more in you ask yourself, well, what do we do to help those boys? Do they need more nurturing from their mom? Do we need to take away social media? Do we need to
Right.
get them outside doing more physical activities? And it's like, well, yeah, all of that's good. But what they really need is
All
present
right,
and
hubba.
caring fathers. And there's just this bond between a father and especially a son that develops their self-confidence, their ability to handle emotions, their ability to go out and conquer the world. And we need to do that as men for our sons. But the problem is that too many men right now are wounded and they're not showing up
Mm-mm.
because they have a little boy inside of them that is struggling and wounded and is fearful. And they've never been initiated into masculinity. We used to go through this process where it's like, okay, hey, you're a boy. Now we're going to transition you into manhood and you have to do this thing. Well, we don't do that anymore. So when men are broken, they start to feel this shame inside. And I love this. There's this very basic definition. I know it goes deeper into, like you can get deeper into it, but shame versus guilt. Guilt is I did something bad, and shame is I am bad. So when men struggle with things, let's say, like me, for example, uh, I tend to get upset at my kids, especially when they don't do something the first time or when they're disrespectful to their mom or, just flat out disobedient. I get upset. And if I yell at them, instead of saying, I did something bad, I need to improve that, I internalize the message of I'm a bad man because I got upset and yelled at my kids.
Right.
And that's the difference. And so many men are just walking around with shame. And
And it's funny because you'll see a couple where the woman might even be yelling more than the man, but
mhm,
it's but that's mom. She can do that
right.
because she's mother.
Okay.
Well, you got something to say about that?
No, I'm just saying, like, I actually experienced that growing
Yeah,
up.
and well, I did too because this is my second marriage. My wife and I both came from other marriages. We have kids with another woman. My kids have a lot of. They're adults now. They're in their 20s, but they come to me and they go, "Dad, Mom always told us that you were the problem with it, or Mom always told us that you." Okay, they lived with their mother. They would come and visit me a lot. I had visitation and we had joint custody. But when they were with their mother, she would always talk bad about me.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, they came to realize their trauma is from their mother yelling at them, not me. But we get the blame. Men get the blame. If we are a little bit stern, how dare you? How dare you? But mom could be like, "La, la, 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 la." That's mom. Well, in the old days, she was just considered a nag, just as bad as
Yeah.
the dad was a jerk.
So what happens with that shame is you'll notice it attaches to your identity. I am this, I am that. And Satan attacks identity. And there's a great example of Satan doing that with Jesus in Matthew 4. And in verse 3, it says, the tempter came to him and said, if thou be the Son of God, turn these stones to bread. And then in verse 6, he says, if thou be the Son of God, cast thyself down and the angels will catch you, right? And he's
Right.
trying to tempt him saying, if you're this, right? If you are actually who you say you are, then prove it. But Jesus was so confident in his identity, he didn't need to do that. And there's a scripture I love in John 14:6. And it says, Jesus saith unto him, not to Satan, but if you put it in that context, it's actually pretty powerful. Jesus saith unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And those two words, I am, are some of the most powerful words in the English language. And unfortunately, um, there's a lot of men who struggle with their identity. And uh,
I have a
examples.
24-year-old son. Sorry. I have a 24-year-old son going through that right now.
Yeah.
He got a woman pregnant. They were living together. And he's worshiping her.
Yeah.
She won't let me and my wife come and see my grandchild. I have a grandchild that's 7 months old that I haven't met, and there's no reason. It's become designer. A woman has a baby out of wedlock. You have the male that's worshiping her, wanting to be in her life so that he could be a part of his baby's life. Because he's into drugs and alcohol right now, he doesn't take the time to go to court and do it the proper way. So they end up, or these males just don't know their rights, and they keep thinking they have to jump through these hoops for these women that have the baby out of wedlock. And then I call it designer. They pick and choose. It's normal. We looked it up. They pick and choose who they want in the baby's life. The mother does. I don't want
Hmm.
these grandparents. I don't need them, but I'm going to keep my parents or maybe just my dad. These are the people I want. And what they're doing is they're affecting the kid's life by not having more people to love them and be in their life. And it's horrible.
Yeah. There's a whole study on what grandparents do for children. And when you don't have that strong masculine role model in your life, everything starts to break down. But I have a list of things that actual men have said about themselves and how they view themselves, the I am statements. And it's, I am worthless, I'm an addict, I'm broken, I'm a piece of crap, I'm unlovable, I'm unredeemable, I am disgusting. This is how men see themselves. And so I've been to quite a few of these boot camps, and they like to ask these questions. So what happens is there's, anywhere from 30 to 130 guys in a room, and everyone puts their heads down. And who's ever facilitating will ask these questions, and they'll say, "Are you more stressed than you show?" And if it's true, you raise your hand. And about 80% said yes to that. And then they ask a question, "Are you losing sleep because you're worried and your brain just won't shut off?" About 70% said yes. "Do you feel lost or alone?" About 90% say yes. And then, "Do you feel exhausted or hopeless?" About 80%. And this is across all of them. It's always consistent. Men are always feeling this way. And it's so sad. Um, and so they are broken. And you ask, like, what does this brokenness lead to? Well, it's a lot like what happens with the boys. And there's this thing that I discovered. It's called despair death. As I was preparing for this presentation. And I'm just going to read the quote. It says, late last year, a study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found that middle-aged white American males have been getting sicker and dying in greater numbers, mainly from suicides, drug overdoses, and alcohol-related liver diseases. So suicide right now is the number one biggest killer for men under 50 in the US, and that's according to the National Institute of Mental Health.
But but white males, right, are the highest?
This one just says just
okay.
men.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think men in general are struggling, and you talk about, like we talk about men and women a little bit in the differences, but men have a suicide rate that's 4 times higher than women. The women are a lot better about going somewhere and opening up, talking to their friends about things. Guys have a lot harder time doing that.
Well, imagine being raised. You still remember, how old are you?
37.
So you kind of remember a time where where males were still a hero.
Yeah.
Right. I think the last 10 years it died. But imagine being one of those males today in high school where and I keep bringing up drama, where every play or musical is about a female heroine, and my 17-year-old boys are going through that right now. My daughter, she lives on the coast. She's got some, women have insecurities too. They're just different. But she has her life together. She's got a job. She's got an apartment. She's got a car. She's independent. My 24-year-old, she's 23. My 24-year-old boy, my oldest son, completely the opposite. We teach seminary. The girls are always raising their hand, talking, participating. The boys had their head like this.
Yeah.
Boys have been told to go, not told, but, shut up, go get an Xbox, go in the room and just play video games. And then what are they told to play? Not told. What do they end up playing? These games where they're shooting other men.
Yep.
And it's just it's a very toxic combination.
Oh yeah.
That we have.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you think we're coming out of it? Do you see some thing? I mean, we just voted for Trump. The whole United States sent a message to Washington. Is wokeism dying or dead? Is it dying? It's not dead yet, but do you see that mindset dying?
I have heard that it's dying, and I've also noticed a trend of men wanting more. They want brotherhood, they want connection. And that's really how you start to heal men is through connection. They need two different kinds of connection. They need connection with God, and they need connection with other good men, essentially a brotherhood. And we think that we can get that from elders quorum, and sometimes you can. Um, but the problem with most elders quorums is they don't spend the time to develop good, strong relationships with each other.
Well, that's also because we're divided ideologically too now in the church. So you're going to have half those men in elders quorum think that there's not a problem because they were raised, the dynamics in their life were just on course. That's what bothers me, because I was raised with a very dominating, you said you were too, a mother that was verbally abusive, emotionally neglectful, but a father also that had problems. But when you see a leader or a man in elders quorum that talks about his mother as a great person, and she was always there for him and nurtured by his mother, he's going to think that women are, that there's not a problem in society with men being neglected. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I have to clarify for the record, my mom was really good. My dad was really good, but my mom was usually the one yelling more in the house. Um, but yeah, so what I've seen, especially in my elders quorum, is we have an older generation that definitely feels like all is well in Zion. And then I watch the younger guys in there, and they all kind of do that same thing you were talking about. They just start to put their head down, they pull out their phone, they're playing a game, and they are checked out before the lesson even starts.
Yeah.
And like imagine coming into an elders quorum and actually doing what the apostles have asked us to do. So Elder Gong gave a conference talk. I think it's either 2018 or 2020, somewhere in there. But he says we need to change our meetings and we need to make them more open, authentic, and safe. So authenticity is key for men. They want to be authentic. They want to be themselves. They don't want to pretend to be this perfect, guy that goes to church every week and has it all figured out. We want to go to a place where we can open up and say, "Hey, here's the struggles that I'm having. Here's what I'm dealing with this week." And not have someone say, "Well, brother, you just need to pray more."
Right.
Like, really? That's not helpful.
Or the other thing, like I said, is I've got a friend who's a stake president now. He was my bishop, but he was my friend. He was my good friend before he became bishop and before he became stake president. I didn't have good upbringing with my mother. He did. He doesn't see a problem. He sees males as needing to step up, but he doesn't know why they aren't stepping up. And I have a lot of baggage about my mother, but then he doesn't. Yeah. So he focuses on how women are being mistreated. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm focused on more of the males being mistreated.
Yeah.
And so we don't see eye to eye on that. But like I said, I have a daughter too. And I see things from her perspective because she talks to me. She's afraid of men. She's afraid of, and I don't blame her. You have a lot of men that weren't trained right and have a lot of baggage and mistreat their dates or, and she's being told that it's a scary world, that men are bad. So it's either way, sad.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. There's a great book by John Eldridge. It's called Wild at Heart. And they have a female version too. It's called Captivating. And they go through and talk about the core desires. Wild at Heart is the core desires of a man. And They say every man basically needs three things in his life. He needs a battle to fight, an adventure to live, and a beauty to love. And I almost feel like it's as a boy, it's that order. Uh, we need something to fight for. We need an adventure to go on, and then we need to find our beauty to love. And each one of those is an hour-long discussion by themselves. But uh, when we can get men on the right track, so they can start helping the boys that are up and coming, we can start to shift the tide in society. And when the girls actually meet, I shouldn't say girls, when women actually meet a real man, they'll recognize it and say, wow, this guy is the real deal. He's confident, he's strong, he's caring. He's kind, but also firm. Like
Right.
that's what they want. They don't want this guy, like I said, to come up and be like, "Oh, I love you so much. I'll do anything for you." But if they're not taught better, you know, and that's the thing, like we as fathers, we need to be teaching our boys, hey, this is how you need to behave. This is how you deal with emotions. This is how you interact with women. And they need to be able to see that and have it modeled. I wanted to talk a little bit about Warrior Heart Boot Camp and just my experience. So I'll go through this story real quick. So I landed my dream job, and it was awesome for a little over 3 months. I was in this real estate company, smaller kind of startup, and the real estate market didn't do what they wanted, and so they ended up letting me go. And a month later, the entire data team got let go. And I was feeling down, like I had just been knocked over. And my wife listened to this podcast, and it's called Is Elder Quorum Working? And in the podcast, they talked about this retreat. My wife was like, you need to go to this retreat. I think it'd be good for you. I was like, I'm not going to a men's retreat. That's weird. Like, I don't want to go spend time with a bunch of men. I don't know. But I went to the website because she asked me, and there's no information on there. They're like, here's how you sign up. And I'm like, oh man. But I noticed that they had a scholarship section, and it said that they start handing out scholarships 6 weeks before the boot camp. And I said, okay, God, I'll make you a deal. If you get me a scholarship, I will go. Because this was about 2 weeks beforehand. And in my mind, it's like all the scholarships are already gone. There's no way for me to go. But I made that deal with them. It was like a day or two later, I got an email saying, hey, we found you a sponsor. Okay, I guess I'm going. So it was down in Arizona, and I drove down. Again, no idea what was coming, but I walked in the doors on that registration period, the first day, and this guy, again, I didn't know him, came up and just put his arms around me and said, hey, brother, we're so glad you're here. We've been praying for you. And it hit me so hard, and I was like, man, I wish elders quorum are like this, where you walk in and someone embraces you and you feel loved. And I started this journey of healing there. And I spoke to God for the first time in a long time while I was there. I had built this wall up around my heart, and I was looking like I was doing all the right stuff. I was going to church every week. I was praying, I was doing everything I was supposed to, but I was doing it all without faith. My heart was shut down. I wasn't alive. And when I actually spoke to God, like really talked to him, that started to change for me. And I've decided to go to another boot camp about 7 months later. And it was during that one that I found a group of guys that meet every week near where I live. And so every Tuesday I go and we spend time together as brothers, and we get a meal afterwards and we just talk. And it's the most amazing experience just to be open and authentic and real with someone, and to know that if I need help, I've got 100+ guys that I can call and someone will step up and be there for me. I've never been let down by these guys. And so
Amazing.
to
Well,
anybody that's
and
listening,
it's cool. It's in Utah, so there's probably a lot of Latter-day Saints too, huh?
yeah, there's a lot. They're not all, but a lot are, yeah. But questions that I would ask any guy that's listening, when was the last time you just spent time with God? When was the last time you had a real conversation with him? And then you can ask yourself, like, what makes your heart come alive? What does that look like for you? And then are they willing, are the men listening willing to go spend 3 days with God and start that healing process themselves? Are they willing to step into a new adventure, and are they willing to find a brotherhood that will be there for them and take care of them? And that's what I have found through these warrior heart boot camps. They are non-denominational, so they talk about God, they talk about Jesus, talk about Bible, but it's not LDS specific. So anybody who's Christian could go and feel welcome and at ease. But this has been such a transformational experience. You asked about, like, credentials earlier, and it's just, I've been on this journey and it's been so amazing for me. And I've seen hundreds of men that have had transformative experiences through something like this. And
Amazing.
we need more men.
Well, can we leave a website?
Yeah. Yeah.
What? Okay. What can you plug it now, or you're gonna email it to me too, and I'll put it in the comments section.
Yeah, if they go to awarriorheart.com.
awarriorheart.com.
Mm-hmm. Yep, they could go in there, and it's all right there.
Can they get a hold of you too?
They are more than welcome to get a hold of me.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll send you my email.
Yeah.
Anybody that wants to reach out, more than welcome to.
I have your email because I emailed you the Zoom.
Yeah, you do have it. So.
But this is amazing, brother. I am so. Did you have anything else you wanted to
add? I would just say the last thing that I would share is I'm just thankful to God for pushing me in this direction. This 2 years ago, this is a million miles from where I thought I would be. I never thought I'd be on a podcast talking about healing men's hearts, but he is so good. And
Are you married?
Yeah.
And have children?
6 kids.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I understand, brother. I know how you feel. I feel it every day. And I don't feel like my wife understands. Sometimes I don't feel like a lot of people understand. I feel like I have, I feel like our church, look, the church isn't perfect. It is run by our Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ. I have a testimony of it.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like the brethren need to really look at the men and know that they're hurting, and that it's not always placating to the sisters, because sisters can be wrong sometimes.
Yeah.
And we've kind of gotten away from that. I'm not trying to be negative or cynical. What I'm saying is, men have been told that everything that happens that's not, even disagreements in marriages, it's always the church has been
happy wife, happy life.
That's right. And that's not cool, man. No. That's not cool. Brigham Young didn't teach that. He said, he even said, wives, don't nag your husbands,
Yeah.
And it's not, my brother's going through a divorce right now, and his wife is, I'm sorry, but she's, I'm not going to say it. I'm saying my brother's going through a divorce, and it's not all his fault. but she has in her mind that she can do no wrong, and the brethren in the church, I hope someday we come back to where we need to look at each other as equal partners, not that, like I said, that the husband has to placate to everything. And well, let me give you an example. Andrea and I are happily married, but she'll tend to take over things. But as far as like the seminary lessons and stuff, you know, when you're working with somebody, she feels like it's okay for her to just dominate everything, you know, and that I need to stand back. Where she's 10 years younger than me. I'm 53, she's 43. So she's a millennial. And sometimes I wonder if that's because she's that young, that she has that mindset. And I have to remind her, you know, babe, I'm also important here. You know, I've got ideas that I want to put into this too.
Yeah.
But I'll see my stake president friend who comes over once in a while and talks. If I bring something, let me rephrase this. He'll always see some disagreement, a funny disagreement between her and I, and he'll make a comment to me, in front of everyone, like, "She's your wife. She's always right," you know. And I'll look at him and go, "No, dude, you know, we're friends." Before he's my stake president, I'll be like, "No, dude, you're wrong. That is not a true statement."
Right.
Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, we need to focus on men. It's impossible to go to the youth, and like we were talking about, we can't go to the youth and say, "Hey guys, suicide rates are up in your category. You need to fix it."
Yeah.
Like you can't put that burden on them. That's not fair.
No.
No, that has to be placed on the men. That's where it should be. It's on our shoulders to go help them.
Absolutely.
But we need to be right in our heart before we can go help them.
Yep.
And we do that by getting right with God, because that's the only source of validation that we need. And if we can get that and understand who we are and our relationship with Him, we can change the world. And that's what we need to do. As men, we need to stand up, we need to fight, and we need to change the world.
Amen. Thank you so much, Adam.
Yeah. Thank you.